It was a usual boring afternoon for officers Kevin and Robert as they patrolled. They were chatting with their colleagues when suddenly, an old lady fell down in front of them. Instead of helping her, they started laughing, but their laughter didn't last long. Soon, they learned who the lady was and realized they could get in trouble. Who was she? Should they say sorry for laughing? And could they lose their jobs if they didn't? When officers Kevin and Robert first joined the police, they were excited newcomers, eager to follow the rules and protect their city. But over time, they changed. They became indifferent, not caring about helping others like they used to. Even though they started out with high hopes, now they would just laugh at someone's misfortune instead of lending a hand. The usual patrols and small crimes they dealt with seemed pointless. They thought they deserved better, more important tasks. Velma always made sure she looked neat and tidy. But one day, she tripped and fell, spilling her things everywhere. Kevin and Robert were nearby, but instead of helping, they did something unexpected. They laughed at her. This action would have serious consequences for them and their careers. An inappropriate chuckle escaped from Officer Kevin's lips, but this was not the worst as Officer Robert released a roar of laughter. Poor Velma, who had hurt herself slightly from her skin scraping against stone, tried to push herself off the floor. Daniel remarked, a smirk playing on his face. Robert, playing along, responded to this, grinning, a literal trip down memory lane. As they exchanged jokes, they didn't see the disapproving stares of onlookers as a small crowd formed around the incident. A young woman rushed forward toward Velma, gently turning her over and checking to see if she had any injuries. As she stood up straight again, she cast a nasty glance at the two officers who were still making jokes about what had just happened. Seeing how they were too engrossed to notice if anything was wrong with Velma, the woman shot them a sneer. How could you? The young woman's voice trembled with fury as she addressed the two policemen who turned to her, stopping joking around. The two officers felt untouchable in their uniform, but when they found out who Velma truly was, they would find that that wasn't really the case. She continued, "Is this the kind of protection and service we're supposed to expect from you?" She spat. Officer Robert was the first to open his mouth and asked, "Who is she?" to Officer Kevin, keeping his voice low to avoid drawing attention to it. Officer Kevin merely shrugged, his usual confident demeanor wavering. "I don't know, but I have the feeling that we need to find out." In the meantime, Velma was gently escorted to a nearby bench. Concerned bystanders tried to make her feel comfortable and were tending to the small scrapes on her skin. As Velma sat on the bench nursing her minor injuries, a storm of emotions raged within her. The laughter of the officers echoed in her ears, their faces etched in her memory. Over the years, she had noticed the dwindling number of officers patrolling the streets. The city was growing, and with it came new challenges. Crime rates were on the rise, and the police force seemed stretched thin. She understood the pressures they were under, the long hours, and the thankless tasks. The next morning, everyone in town was talking about what happened. People whispered about it in coffee shops, grocery stores, and on street corners. As time passed, people stopped being shocked and started feeling unhappy about it. The community used to trust the police a lot, but now they weren't so sure. Parents warned their kids to be careful, and older folks like Velma felt worried when they saw police cars. The city used to really respect its police officers. They were seen as heroes who kept the peace and made sure things were fair. But now, everyone felt sad about how things had changed. They missed the old days when the police were a symbol of hope and trust. The next day, when officers Kevin and Robert went to work, everything felt different. The usual friendly talk was gone, replaced by a heavy quietness. As they walked to their desks, they could feel everyone's eyes on them, and it made them uncomfortable. The usual nods of acknowledgement were missing, and in their place were cold, distant stares. As the day wore on, it became clear that Kevin and Robert had been branded the shameful do of the precinct. Their actions had not only embarrassed themselves, but had also cast a shadow over the entire department. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on Kevin and Robert. Their earlier indifference had transformed into a gnawing anxiety. Back at their desks, officers Kevin and Robert immediately booted up their computers. They accessed the city's database, hoping to find any information on Velma. Despite their exhaustive efforts, Velma's identity remained elusive. She was like a ghost present in their memories but absent from all records. Exhausted and on the verge of giving up, Kevin decided to take a break and wandered into the precinct's archives. Amidst the dusty shelves and old case files, a yellowed newspaper caught his eye. Curiosity piqued, he began to skim through it. As he flipped the pages, an article grabbed his attention. The headline hinted at a significant event from years ago, and as he read on, he realized he might have stumbled upon a crucial piece of the puzzle. Hastily, Kevin rushed back to their shared desk, the old newspaper clutched tightly in his hand. "Robert, you need to see this," he exclaimed. The article detailed a community event from decades ago celebrating the resilience and spirit of the city's residents. It spoke of notable figures, philanthropists, and everyday heroes. But what caught the officer's attention was a mention of a woman named Velma who had played a pivotal role in a community project. The details matched Velma's description, and the timeline seemed to fit. Beside the article was an old black and white photograph. It showcased a group of people, but one face stood out. A younger Velma, her eyes sparkling with determination and kindness, looked back at them. They had inadvertently discovered a piece of her past, a chapter of her life that had been immortalized in print. They had ridiculed a woman who had once been celebrated in the very city they vowed to protect. The guilt was overwhelming. They had to make amends, not just for their sake, but for Velma's and the legacy she represented. The officers began to plan their approach. They would visit Velma, face their mistake head-on, and offer a heartfelt apology. With a deep breath, Officers Kevin and Robert stood outside Velma's residence. They knocked gently, waiting for the door to open. As Velma greeted them, her eyes held a mix of surprise and weariness. The officers cleared their throats, hoping she would grant them a few moments of her time to seek her forgiveness. Inside Velma's cozy living room, the officers began. "We deeply regret our actions, ma'am," Kevin began, his eyes downcast. Robert added, "We failed in our duty, not just as officers but as human beings." Their apology was heartfelt, their remorse evident. Velma listened intently, her face inscrutable. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "We all make mistakes," she said, her voice gentle. "What matters is that we learn from them." Her words were filled with grace and understanding, showcasing her magnanimity. She acknowledged their sincere remorse and, in her wisdom, offered them a chance at redemption. Wanting to make amends in any way they could, the officers offered to drive Velma to her special place. As they arrived, the officers realized they were at a beautifully maintained memorial park. In front of them stood a statue, a tribute to community heroes of the past. Velma's eyes shimmered with tears as she shared stories of the individuals immortalized in stone, reminding the officers of the values they had vowed to uphold. Velma shared something surprising with the officers. She proudly told them that her younger son had become the chief of police. Kevin and Robert felt the weight of this news heavily. They realized they had laughed at the mother of their own boss, a woman who had done a lot for the city and its police. Seeing how shocked they were, Velma gently explained that she hadn't told her son about what happened. She believed they would realize their mistake and apologize on their own. She trusted in their goodness and believed people can always find the right path again. With bowed heads, Kevin and Robert silently promised Velma, her heroic son, and themselves that they would do better. They would honor their roles and serve the community with genuine care and respect. As time passed, people noticed a change in Kevin and Robert. They sincerely tried to make things right, and their commitment slowly rebuilt the trust they had lost. The story of Kevin and Robert became a source of hope for the city. It showed that it's never too late to fix mistakes and regain honor.